Okay, good morning. Welcome to the Poplar Grove Vintage Wings and Wheels Museum's restoration hangar. We'd like to take a few minutes today to introduce you to a build project that we've had going on for 3 years now. My name is Steve. This is Wally. We're two of the many volunteers that are working on the project. Right now we have 4 basic full-time volunteers who are here at least 4 or 5 days a week. And then we have another dozen or so volunteers that either do work from their home shops or come in occasionally when we have big projects like hanging the wings on the airplane or something like that. We're looking at a project that started about 3.5 years ago, and it started with just a pile of lumber and a pile of steel plate, and now we're at the point where we're getting close to being ready to cover the airplane. So we wanted to give you an update as to what the airplane looks like uncovered. We think it's a beautiful piece of art, and we're going to give you a quick overview of what we have up till now. So I'll take a few minutes to let Wally talk a little bit about the history of the airplane and what we know of that history. So Wally, go ahead.
Yes, this project is a 1918 Curtiss Jenny. Curtiss Jenny was the first production airplane. Approximately 7,500 of them were built in the late teens. It was intended as a primary trainer for the military. It had a short life as that because the war was winding down by that point, but then it became the mainstay of the air service, or airmail service. So they used it for several years, and then since there was such an abundance of them on the market, barnstormers got into it. And that's how most of America was exposed to aviation, was through the barnstormers. They would typically go to a small town, fly around the town, and then land in a field and offer rides or do aerobatic routines just to get people interested. And obviously that worked, considering where we are today in the aviation field. A little bit about Glenn Curtiss too. He was started out as a bicycle builder, racer, much like the Wright brothers, and then got into motorcycles, and eventually his interest turned into aircraft. But he did a great deal for general aviation, aviation in general, but his was the first to use ailerons on the wings for turning and banking the airplane, as opposed to wing warping, which is what the earlier aircraft, such as the Wright brothers, did. So he's credited with a lot of innovations in aviation. But anyway, this is one of his products, and we'll do a little walk around and look closer at some of the detailed and more interesting parts of the airplane.
Well, we'll start our tour, I guess, in the cockpit, where everybody's most interested. Our cockpit has 4 original instruments that we were able to acquire. We have a time period correct altimeter, the clock, the tachometer, and the compass. The other instruments that we've acquired are reproductions, but kind of represent the period as far as avionics go. You'll notice one of the most astounding things in the cockpits, both of them, is that they did have cockpit lighting. We don't know how much night flying they actually did, but that is made, the instrument panel is made directly from original Curtiss drawings, and it did show that it did utilize cockpit lighting. Of course, there was no electrical system on the aircraft. There was no alternator or generator. These cockpit lights ran off of batteries, and we're doing exactly the same thing. These lights are run off of a small battery, and we're pretty proud of the way the cockpit turned out. The sticks, we have a number of variations on the control sticks. One of our members has wood turning equipment in his shop, and he's decided to turn a number of sticks, and several of them are very different designs. So everything you see on the airplane has been made here, other than, like I said, a few of the instruments that we've acquired. The majority of the airplane has been built right here. We're not starting with a known airframe. This aircraft is being built directly from plans, and there's not much that we've sourced out as far as purchasing from other vendors. Most everything's been made right here in-house. If you notice, the front cockpit also has an unusual setup. There are very few avionics in the front cockpit. We did see several variations where they did have a wet compass and an oil pressure gauge, but the main component of that front cockpit is a desk. That panel in the middle folds down and becomes a writing desk or navigating desk. A lot of charts were stored in there, and so we've replicated that to the best of our ability. That's exactly the way the drawings that Curtiss produced between 1915 and 1918 indicated that the panels were designed exactly that way.
Okay, the aircraft is powered by a water-cooled V8. The radiator was one of our major challenges. This radiator is made of approximately 7,000 individual copper tubes. The air flows through the tubes as water is trickling down from the top, and the air moving through the tubes is what cools it. And then, of course, the water will go collect at the bottom, go back through the engine for cooling. But this was one of our major challenges. We attempted to fabricate the tubes ourselves, but we're not having a lot of success. So we eventually found a radiator builder on the West Coast that offered to build it for us. So we just received it a couple of weeks ago, just the core. Now it's up to our crew here to finish this. The jacket that completes the outside is all made of brass, and then everything will have to be soldered to keep it watertight. The hole in the middle, of course, is where the propeller shaft extends. This was a major project, and hopefully will be finished long before the airplane's ready to fly.
You notice the aircraft structure is wood and held together with a lot of cabling. There's 3 different types of cable on the airframe. The aft portion of the aircraft is solid wire, and then it's got a ferrule and a loop that joins the shackle and the turnbuckle. One of our members manufactured a tool to be able to make the eyelets on the ends of the solid wires and made the job much easier. As we move forward in the airframe and we get into the weight-bearing area of the airframe, the cabling goes from being solid wire to being braided wire, and as you move even forward, you'll notice from the forward cockpit up through the engine compartment that all of the wires are doubled, again for strength. The braided cable is bent over and tied with wire tie and then soldered to make it solid. And then the third type of cable, which is a little bit unusual, are the control cables. All of the control cables use a technique called the Navy 5-tuck splice. One of our friends who's involved in the project is an expert at making that 5-tuck splice. It's kind of a difficult skill to master, and he is a master at it. So all of the control cables utilize a slightly different connecting technique than the rest of the airframe. So those are the 3 types. We've got the braided cable, we've got solid cable, and then we've got the control cables. And there's a tremendous number of wires on the whole airplane. As you look at the airframe as a whole, the wing structure, the fuselage structure is held together with a tremendous number of wires. And we found that the turnbuckles and shackles are our 3rd largest expense on the aircraft. We've got a line budget item on that of roughly $9,000 just for turnbuckles and shackles. So they're relatively expensive to purchase.
Okay, this is the power plant that will power the aircraft. This is an original OX5, approximately 550 cubic inches, develops a whopping 90 horsepower. We found this engine out in Oklahoma, and brought it back fairly complete. The balance of the rebuild is being done in-house. They've spent probably the last year just acquiring parts. Believe it or not, there are still parts available for these engines. Probably because even though the Jenny accounted for about 7,500 of them, we estimate there were about 11 or 12,000 built. So there are still engines available out there. So we've been able to acquire everything we need. And a lot of the parts are just being refurbished.
Okay, well, we hope you enjoyed your quick little tour. We hope to see you come out soon and visit us and check out the Jenny in person. We are, again, part of the Poplar Grove Vintage Wings and Wheels Museum, and I'd like to have you come visit our entire campus. On behalf of Wally, myself, Steve, and the rest of the build crew, again, thank you and hope to see you soon.